Hi, hope everyone is well. And this shir is in honor of the memory and the legacy of the late Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs Zatzal, whose influence, his impact will reverberate for many, many years to come. I want to share with you, and in honor of the Emunah organization, a thought for Hanukkah, shir for Hanukkah, and some ideas that in its pieces, you have a few ideas here, but in total, there's an idea that I want to be able to give over. So I want to start this by looking at 5 questions with regards to Hanukkah. The first begins with the Gemara on Shabbos 21b. That is the Gemara which asks the question, "My Hanukkah?" Right? For what purpose? Why Hanukkah? The Thon Rabbanan, B'chafei b'Kislev Yomei de Hanukkah, Timya Inun Delo Lisped Bahon. The days of Hanukkah are 8, no hesped on them, no eulogizing. Lo Lisanos Bahon, not to have fasting. Shenichnesu Yavonim Lahechel Timu, right? Kol Hashmanim Shebehechel. When the Yavonim, the Greeks, went into the courtyard went to the Hechel, the sanctuary of the Beis HaMikdash, they were metame, they made impure all the oil. Ukshegavra Malchut Beit Chashmonai, and when the kingdom of the Chashmonaim, the Kohanim, they rose up and the Venitzchum, they beat them, they checked, and they couldn't find anything. Elopach echad shel shemen, 1 jug of oil, shahaya munach bechosmo shel kohen gadol, that in it was sealed the insignia of the kohen gadol. V'lo haya bo'el lahadlik, and there was only enough to last for 1 day, and the miracle was that it lasted for 8 days. Okay, so that's the famous Gemara about Hanukkah. And the question is, first of all, number 1, that insignia thing. We never find that as a requirement anywhere with regards to the laws of the Beit HaMikdash, that the oil that's used has to be sealed with the insignia of the Kohen Gadol. That's one. Why? Number 2, why specifically does the Gemara and this holiday insist that the miracle and the salvation of the day come about through the Kohanim? Why the Kohanim? Right? We've had many heroes throughout the history of our people, but why the Kohanim? Number 3, it also says that they ended up becoming the kings, right? They ended up taking over the monarchy. Why did they take the Malchus? I mean, the kings are supposed to come from Lo Yasir Shevet Mi Yehuda. The scepter shall not depart from Yehuda. So why did it end up coming from them? Why did it move into the realm of the Kohanim? Number 4, the Gemara here emphasizes the miracle of this oil, that 1 cruse of oil that was there. But the military victory was no less impressive. And the question is, why does the Gemara at least emphasize the miracle of the oil over that of the military victory? Now, it's one thing if Judaism emphasizes the supernatural over the natural. But, I mean, the case of the Exodus from Egypt is really about the crushing of the Egyptians. The story of Purim emphasizes the natural defeat of Achashverosh, of Haman. So the question is, why does Hanukkah emphasize the oil over the military? And number 5, I quote to you the Bach commenting on the, Shulchan Aruch says, he quotes the Midrash, that you want to beat the Jews, you take away their lights. And that's what the Greeks were trying to do. You want to beat the Jews, you take away their menorah. I'd like to unpack that Midrash a little bit and figure out what is the profundity of that statement. Why is that significant? What is the connection there? What does the Jews have to do with their lights and all of that? So this idea that I'm sharing with you has to do, is developed by the Tosha Rebbe. Tosh dynasty is currently in the outskirts of Montreal. And the Tosha Rebbe, the last Tosha Rebbe was a very prominent scholar, a major Talmid Chacham, a wonderful Rebbe, and his Divrei Torah are creative and innovative. And he says the following idea. He says that we know that every Jew has within them a Nakuda HaPnimis, a central point. There's the Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara in Sanhedrin 44a says, Yisrael, afal pi shechata Yisraelhu, that if a Jew, even though he sins, he's still a Yisrael. He's still a Jew at his core. There is something called in the Pintala Yid, that Nakuda Pnimis, the Tehillim, for example, Lamed Zayin Pasuk Yud says, Od me'at ve'ein Russia. A little bit left, and there's no longer a Russia. That's that center point that can't be touched. The Nakuda Pnimis of every person that's always intact. Let me tell you about that central point. There's a medrash that tells us a story with an individual whose name was Yosef Meshisa. And when the Romans came to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, they didn't know their way around. They didn't know what was where and how and where they would find everything. So they needed a guide. They took a Jew, a traitor to God and a traitor to his nation, to help them out and show them around the Beis HaMikdash. They told him that as payment for his tour of the Beis HaMikdash, he could take whatever he wanted from the spoils. And Yosef Meshisa went in and took the golden menorah. And imagine how far this is, that a Jew could go so low to steal the menorah itself. But the Romans told him it's not appropriate for a commoner like you to keep that item. I know we promised you would take whatever. Go back and take something else, anything else, just not the menorah. Yosef Meshisa says, I can't go back in. They said, you're going to have tremendous income from this. There'll be no tax collection. He says, I cannot go back in. Isn't not enough that I angered my God and defiled his temple one time? I should have to do it again? And the Romans tortured him until he died. The Panovich Rav once asked, what happened here? What made Yosef Meshisa do tshuva? He was apparently a Jew who had no sensitivity whatsoever to Jewish values. And then he turned around and was prepared to die as a martyr. What happened here that transformed him from a wicked person to a righteous person? And the Panovich Rav says, from the very fact that Yosef Meshisa entered into this holy place, it transformed him. He was exposed to the Kedusha. He went into the Beis HaMikdash for the worst of reasons and with the worst of intentions. But he walked out a different person. And there is something very real about Kedusha and Tahara, holiness and purity. Just exposure to the presence of the Shekhinah can change a person forever. The Nekuda Pnimis, it's always there. It's just waiting to be reached, to be accessed in order to come out. There's a teaching, an ancient teaching from the Sefer Yetzirah, Kabbalistic work, the concept of Ashin, Ayin Shin apostrophe Nun, Olam Shana Nefesh, that everything in the world exists on three levels. It exists in the realm of the world. It exists in the realm of time, Shana, and Nefesh, and exists in the terms of the body, the soul. Olam Shana Nefesh. You can take any concept and break it down into three. So Nefesh, soul, is the Kohen Gadol. The body's the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. The time referential, the Olam referential to the Kohen Gadol is the Beit HaMikdash. That's his space. That's his Olam. That's not his time. That's his world. That's his physical space. The Shana aspect that relates to Kohen Gadol, Beit HaMikdash, is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is when he enters into the Holy of Holies. It's the holiest point in the calendar. It's when there's no Yetzer Hara at all. So ultimately, to uncover this level of the Ashin itself, of the Olam Shana Nefesh, to uncover this access, this Nekuda Pnimis, this holiest point of the year, the Kohen Gadol has to do it. Because he's the one who enters into the Kodesh Kodashim. He enters Lifnai V'Lifnim. He enters into the holy spot on earth. The Tikkunei Zohar teaches us that we have this idea of Komas Ha'adam. Let me explain Komas Ha'adam. Komas Ha'adam means that there's an original figure of a human being that's sort of been broken down and shattered. And it's our work that we do in this world that restores the person back up. So much of what Emunah does is to restore people back to where they were, is to restore them to being intact, to being good with themselves again, and to being a whole individual. And on one level, Chachma needs to dominate the leiv, the brain, the mind, the wisdom of that needs to dominate the emotions. We know that in Hanukkah, Shemen represents Chachma, and it's about bringing out that inner wisdom. Hanukkah is about tapping into that inner wisdom. Malchus Yavan, the Greek kingdom at the time, tried to bring such a darkness. And we had to uncover in the dark for that Nekuda Pnimis, that little spark, that little spot. And therefore, because of that, says the Tosha Rebbe, this was a very unique time. The Kohanim, the Kohen Gadol, they had to take over. We needed them because they're the ones who know how to excavate. They're the ones who know how to go all the way in. They can go all the way into that space that no one else could enter, into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. The Bnei Yissaschar says that we know that 36 candles of Hanukkah access for us, when you add up all the candles of Hanukkah, it's 36, which is Lamed Vav, the hidden tzaddikim, it accesses the Or Aganus. When you light the Hanukkah candles, you're literally looking into the hidden light. And what is that about? That hidden light helps us access the Nekuda Pnimis, that inner spark, that inner space. That's why the Chidushei HaRim says we don't look at the candles more than a half hour. Chatzi shah, you don't stay more than that. It's too intense. Where you're going to go, where you're going to enter is too much, that Nekuda Pnimis. That's why we say that according to one teaching, it's based on a Mishnah Bikurim, that Hanukkah is really the closing of the close, right? We say it closes on Yom Kippur, then it closes on Shana Rabbah, then it closes on Hanukkah, because the Bikurim brought into Hanukkah. So the mystical sources say that therefore Hanukkah is the Gemar HaChasima. That's when it officially closes. Why? Because Hanukkah represents when you finally, if all hope has failed, everything hasn't worked, you have found a way to find the inner spark, the Nakuda Pnimis. There was a great, amazing Hasidic Rebbe. His name, Rav Klonimus Kalman Shapira of Piazetzna, the Eish Kodesh. And he was killed in the Warsaw, he was the Rav of the Warsaw Ghetto. He was killed in Auschwitz. And his book, Eish Kodesh, is a collection of essays that he wrote while his life was falling apart, while the Warsaw Ghetto was really crumbling around him. He was losing an entire family. He was a faithful mediator of Torah in a time of torment. And he has a tremendous teaching. He reads the Pasuk in Malachi. Pasuk in Malachi says, Torah's emes haisa b'fihu, the Torah of truth shall be in his mouth. Va'avla lo nimtze b'svasav, and no, sinfulness should be found on his lips. B'shalom uvameishor helech, he walked with me in peace and uprightness. Iti v'rabim heishiv ma'on, right, and turned many away from iniquity. Ki sifse kohen yishmeru das, the lips of the Kohen will preserve das, knowledge. The Torah yavakshem apihu, and they should seek Torah from his mouth. Ki malach Hashem tzvakasu, because he is the priest is the malach of Hashem. He's the angel of Hashem. That's the pasuk. So malach as a messenger of Hashem, right? That's what it means over there, technically speaking. But the Gemara in Moed Katan 17a says the following: Hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan, my dechiv ki sifse kohen yishmeru das v'Torah yavakshu mepihu, right? Because the lips of the Kohen will preserve das, and the Torah you shall seek from his mouth. Ki malach Hashem tzvakasu, because he is the malach of Hashem. And im dome harav lamalach Hashem, if the Rav is compared to an angel of Hashem, yavakshu Torah mepihu, then you shall seek Torah from his mouth. If he's not, don't seek Torah from his mouth. Meaning the Rebbe, the teacher, should be somebody who is like a malach. And if they're like a malach of Hashem, you shall seek Torah from their mouths. So instead of understanding malach as a messenger, the Piazetzna understands it based on the Gemara as an angel, a malach. So we know that if one's Rebbe is of a quality, of a certain type of personality, that's the person you should go to. So asks the Rebbe, Rav Klonimus Kalman Shapira of Piazetzna. He says, what do you do about Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi, who the Gemara tells us in Shabbos 25b, Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, Kach hayom in Hagol shel Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi, Erev Shabbos mevialo areva malechamin. On Erev Shabbos, they would bring him a basin filled with hot water. And what would he do there? He would rochetz panav yadav raglav. He would wash his face, hands, and feet. Umitate v'yoshef besadinin hamotzioni. He would wrap himself and sit in fringed linen robes. Bedoma lamalach Hashem tzvakos. And he was like an angel of Hashem. Meaning, Erev Shabbos, when they brought him his basin with hot water and he washed his hands and his feet and he wrapped himself, then he was like a doma lamalach of Hashem. So ask the Piazetzner, wait a second. So that means, what about not on Erev Shabbos when he wasn't like an angel? Would he not be allowed to instruct his students? So this question that he's asking the Eish Kodesh is really autobiographical. He's really asking him about himself because he's bothered by his own entitlement to this role. Literally everything is falling apart around him. He's wondering the quality of his own ability to be a rabbi, to lead people. And he concludes that if this angelic persona at least occasionally appears, then on the other days, the colder days, the community should mevakesh Torah mapiyu, seek Torah from their mouths, arouse that angel that's asleep within. If the angel is clearly manifest, he doesn't need people to ask him for Torah. It's there already. But if the teacher never manifests itself as an angel, then it'll not help. Any solicitation from the students won't help. Rather, that Tzibor's ability to bring it out as if that spark is still there, that Nakud is still there, that flicker is still in the heart of the Rebbe. But the people fan it out, and the people have to bring it out. What a beautiful teaching from the Rebbe of Piazetzna, facing his own darkness, but recognizing that within there still is the spark. I'd like to take all of this and use this perhaps to answer the famous question of the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef, most famous question on Hanukkah is, why is Hanukkah 8 nights? If there was enough oil to last for 1 night, then the miracle is that it was for 7. Why do you have 8? Perhaps that 1 extra night past the 7 is the Nekuda HaPnimis, that inner spark, that inner light that everyone has. You know, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks believed in that Nekuda, in that spark that's waiting to be awakened. His own story is one such story where the Lubavitcher Rebbe awakened that spark within him to go ahead and teach Torah and write Torah for the masses. I was working on a project with Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Rabbi Sacks wrote a translation for Koren, which is his last work. And I put a commentary together with Rabbi Sam, with a great team, by the way. And we put together a chumash for young adults, for teenagers. And I did it alongside Rabbi Tzvi Grummet. And the idea is to create a project that'll reach everyone. And that's what this Koren Chumash young adult with a translation, a beautiful translation of the Chumash, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. And my commentary is geared towards that Pintele Yid, reaching that inner spark. I hope you can get your hands on a copy. It really is, I think, his last gift that he left in this world before he passed, and a real testimony to his greatness and the significance of uncovering that Nekuda Pnimis. I wish everyone on behalf of Emunah, my congregation here in Los Angeles, Yavna, Yeshiva Yavna, I wish everyone a beautiful Hanukkah filled with lights.